In this lesson, we're going to take a quick look at application logs. Now, application logs are going to be created for every single application you have on your system. A lot of these are going to be logged directly inside the applications folder itself, or they may be consolidated centrally inside of your logging system, such as a SIEM or a Syslog server, or on a Windows machine inside your application log file. Now, for this example, I'm using a generalized version of a log file. And in this application log, we're going to see a lot of different events that have happened. We'll have to determine what was malicious, what was suspicious, and what was just normal user activity. Now, as we go through this generic log, you'll see the date, the time, the event ID, the description, the user who performed the action taken, and the details. Here we can see all these actions happened on the same day and within a couple of minutes of each other, starting at 17:31 in the afternoon and finishing around 17:33. So all this happened within about a minute or two. Next, you'll see the event ID. This is an event ID that is created by the operating system, so you can easily identify what these events are, and you'll notice these are all sequential, so if I was talking to another cybersecurity analyst, I could say, hey, look at line 5400, I think there's something wrong there, and they can know exactly where in the logs to look. The next thing we have is our description column, and here you can see all the things that happened, and from here, we're going to look at all of these entries line by line and see exactly what happened. So first we see that a document was opened, and that document was opening the annual report.docx file. So obviously, we're using a word processor here. The second thing was that a template was loaded, and that template was loaded successfully. There is no error shown in the details. Third, we have the document being saved, and the user saved the document called meetingnotes.docx. So far, I don't see anything malicious here. The fourth line is that a print job started, and Jay Smith tried to start a print job to print out the contract agreement.docx file, and the next line shows that that print was successfully completed and contract_agreement.docx was printed. Now the next line at 5400 is where things start to get a little suspicious for us because we're seeing a blocked action. Here we have a macro execution attempt. This was done by Jay Smith, and it was inside of the docx file called Q3 Financials. In there was a macro detected, and based on the security settings of Word at the time, this was detected and blocked. The next one we have at 5401 is a macro security alert. This was a notification being sent to the user saying there's a potentially malicious macro inside of your file, and so we wanted to inform the user of this action so they could decide what to do. Now at this point we go to 5402 and we see that the macro content was being scanned by the system, the scan was complete, and the macro code matches known malware, telling us this is something malicious that we want to take care of. At 5403, we see the file was quarantined and the action taken was quarantined, and we see the file q3financials.docx was quarantined, so it can no longer infect our system or other people's systems. Next, at 5404, we see the document was closed, and that was the user closing the annual report.docx. Next, we see a template was unloaded, and this was unloading that template file that was loaded earlier up in line 5396. Then we have a document being saved, and they saved revisedplan.docx. They then sent an email, and that was sent out with meetingminutes.docx. And then we see the document was opened. The user opened the budget_planning.xlsx, which is an Excel document. And then we have 5409, where an admin alert was generated to let the administrators know there was a malicious macro detected and blocked for q3financials.docx. So at this point, what do we know happened? Well, we can see that there was one file that was infected with malware, and everything else seems normal and it's not a malicious issue. But the one that was malicious is that macro. And so if we were asked on the exam which of these files is suspicious or malicious, we would answer q3financials.docx based on this log analysis.